Welcome back to the Terribly Vexed podcast. I'm Justin.
I'm Josh.
Folks, we got a doozy for you this episode.
An interview
with a real person, not just a buddy of ours.
A second interview with a real professional and expert in their field, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, and this, Josh, I'm giving you all the credit for this one. You reached out, you made all this happen.
That's true.
You forced me to do it.
You want to kind of talk about that a little bit for just a sec?
Yeah, I'd love to.
How this all came about?
You said, look, check out this book. I'm going to send him a request, see if he'll be interested in doing an interview. I said, yeah, sure, thinking. Not
expecting him to respond within 24 hours.
I didn't think he'd give us the time of day, to be honest. I figured he would listen to us and then he'd be like, I'm not going to do that.
You know, because this is a little podcast still. We're not a large podcast.
Yeah.
So just randomly sending out an email, finding his contact information, his website, and just checking to see. Because we've done this before, a couple of different places that we won't mention now. Because
I was about to.
Okay, go ahead.
I did send a message to a celebrity. Perhaps you've heard of him, Dan Aykroyd.
No response.
But with that, I had zero expectation of a response, and that's what I got.
And had you gotten a response from him, you would have been nervous.
I wouldn't have responded back, probably.
Yeah,
that would be a nerve-wracking one. Extra nerve-wracking, I think.
And, you know, I'll be honest, when he responded back so quickly, Dr. Brian Hayden, I was nervous as well.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, oh, no. Now we got to deliver. We got to do it.
Yeah.
So, real quick, I just want to mention where I first saw his book. It was on Twitter, a.k.a. X now, I guess.
It was an exhalation.
And I like to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
From the account, I have never heard of philosophy. And sort of the point of the thread that they put up had to do with looking at, one of Dr. Hayden's books and sort of comparing it to what we're seeing today in regards to like the parapolitical world. And of course, you know, a good portion of the interview, as you will soon see, had to do with information from his books, The Power of Ritual and Prehistory and Shamans, Sorcerers, and Saints. The thread kind of started out, I'm just going to read to you what the guy said. Guy or girl, I don't even know. Quote, I think it's an essential read for the parapolitically inclined, major implications for the study of terror, the occult, the state, the bourgeois, and the relation between all four. I want to summarize it a bit below. And then he just goes into his summation of what he thinks The Power of Ritual and Prehistory is about.
And we're going to throw that link into the show notes if you'd like to.
There's going to be a lot of links in the show notes. Check those show notes out. There's going to be links to his books, links to his wiki, links to his website, and just a lot of information there for you.
A couple things he mentioned during the interview.
Yes.
Link to that. Wait, are you talking about Brian Hayden?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the guy or girl that tweeted the thing.
Yeah, we'll include that link to the thread so people can read that as well, because that's sort of what we get into a little bit. In one of the emails, we had a correspondence. Okay, so we had a correspondence with Dr. Hayden for probably, 4 or 5 weeks?
Yeah.
And that's why it's taken us such we had some crazy weather where we live for a few weeks.
Oh, yeah. I finally...
You got sick.
Got the COVID.
Right.
Lived through it. Lived to tell the tale.
You got sick, so that was like another week and a half or so.
Yeah.
So there was a number of things that put us back as far as trying to get this thing lined up with schedules and days and times and work and all that stuff. And he's still very active, obviously, in the archaeological world. So, quite a bit of work to get this thing lined up. But we're going to continue on this path. Isn't that right, Justin? The interview path, interviewing professionals, experts. Sure, we can sit here and talk back and forth, and we can do research, do a little book report, and tell people about things. But isn't it better to get an actual professional, someone who's been in whatever field of expertise that they've been in, whatever career path they've chosen for decades, to tell us firsthand what they've seen with their own eyes, what they've studied, what they've experienced.
I hate to say it, but I think you're correct.
We can sort of just sit back and let them talk.
Right.
Because they know.
Right, and that was very helpful with a lot of the questions that we asked, mainly you. I'll say, although I will say, Josh, during most of the interview, as you will all hear, Josh was kind of dancing around the issues that I got to the bottom of at the very end, I'd like to think.
And you'll see that.
Yeah.
At the very end.
At the very end, last two questions.
The real questions.
That's the whole reason we wanted the interview, to be honest.
So, Dr. Hayden, he's he's an author, he's a researcher, he's a professor, archaeologist, and I guess more specifically an ethno-archaeologist. Highly regarded individual, recognized, lots of awards, Fulbright Fellow, Australia. Read out some of his awards here. Wintergren Foundation for Anthropological Research, Canadian Department of External Affairs, Professor Emeritus of Archaeology at Simon Fraser University, British Columbia, Honorary Research Associate, Department of Anthropology at the University of British Columbia. It goes on, and he spoke with us. And this is amazing to me still.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I'm still, this is just incredible.
Yeah.
And so with all that, as you know, we're sort of what would you say? We're obviously a conspiracy podcast, but we sort of like to deal with the mysterious, the strange, the unknown.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be conspiracy, just, odd, perhaps.
Odd, unknown,
Yeah.
ancient history. One of his areas of focus has to do with secret societies. So which obviously gets into modern day. We're talking about secret groups like the Bilderbergs, for example, or the Masons, the Freemasons, things like that. So I was trying to think as we were approaching these questions, how do you ask a serious academic these questions without sounding like a nut? I didn't want to sound like a nut, Justin. And you know that. You saw me.
Yeah.
You're watching me. He did video. We didn't do video. And to sort of give up some of our secrets there, we were sort of bouncing questions and ideas back to each other.
You're holding up like cue cards. Now me, now you.
Right.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
So it was a bit of a challenge to approach some of the topics to a professional like Dr. Hayden.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to sound too crazy.
Right. Atlantis was brought up.
Yeah.
I think that really was about as crazy as it got, isn't it?
Yeah, for the most
I
part.
don't think
You have somebody that knows so much about this stuff, you have to ask them about Atlantis.
Yeah.
You have an ancient history, ancient societies, secret societies professional here. You have to ask them about Atlantis.
Yeah.
Among other things.
Right. Right.
Anyway, so also briefly here before we get going on the interview, I just wanted to give a little more information about Dr. Hayden, things he's done. Just to give you a little more background on him. He goes into some of his career during the interview once we get started on that. But also, he's done excavations at the Dinosaur National Monument, is Tunisia, Guatemala, Lebanon, of course, the United States, like in the Southwest, of course, Canada, British Columbia, specifically a place up there that he spent a lot of time is called Keatley Creek, which is a fascinating thing. I think I sent a link to you on that, which will include, there's several videos, interviews, lots of information. I think in some of the videos listed in that website, that posting on that, he's doing stone tools because he also spent a year in Australia with the Aborigines learning how to make stone tools. So anyway, his education and background just goes on and on. It's very extensive.
Very. And he's spent a lot of time in France as well, in the caves and stuff like that, like Werner Herzog's Cave of Forgotten Dreams. Been there, done that.
Yeah, we talk about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's pretty much all I have as far as introducing Dr. Hayden. Shall we get to the interview then?
I think so.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Enjoy the interview with Dr. Brian Hayden. We're very excited today to have with us an expert in the field of ancient history and secret societies, author, researcher, professor, and ethnoarchaeologist, Dr. Brian Hayden. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Brian Hayden.
Oh, thanks for inviting me to talk on the show today. Yeah, it's a real pleasure.
I guess, kind of first and foremost, we would like to probably discuss your extensive career. If you would like to talk about your career, places you've had some field research, your boots on the ground research, your credentials, all these places you visited. You have an extensive career behind you.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting career. I like to tell people I don't have any specialization. I just dabble, you know. And so I I studied stone tool making with the Australian Aborigines for my PhD work, and before that, I got involved in the Mayan highlands and doing some archaeology and ethnoarchaeology there, and then went back a number of years later and did some more work there. I really liked that area. And then I got pretty interested in French archaeology. I spent a year in France when I was at the University of Colorado. They had a program there, and I maintained connections there ever since. But I got introduced into the caves and the painted caves and French archaeology. It was just fascinating. I love that area as well. But then I got interested in feasting as well, and the role that it might play in the domestication of plants and animals. And it hadn't been very well documented, so I went off to Southeast Asia to see if I could document, it wasn't very well documented from an archaeological perspective or for archaeological purposes. So I went and lived with the hill tribes there for a number of seasons and found all about feasting. So and then I got interested in the different strategies that people use to gain power and inequalities and dominance in societies. And one of those unexplored areas, I mean, one of them was feasting, but there's a whole host of other strategies. And one of the ones that hadn't been very explored before was secret societies. So I got interested in them too, and didn't do a lot of field work because there aren't too many traditional secret societies left in the world, but there's a lot of literature on it. So I got into that literature as well. But I also did some field work as an excavator and other projects or projects of other peoples in Lebanon and Tunisia and France and the Great Plains and the US. And, it's just it's been a really interesting, I don't know, involvement in a number of projects in different parts of the world, Lebanon too. Yeah.
Have you been to Göbekli Tepe?
I haven't been there, but I've met the person that's in charge of the excavations there, and I've read, I think, about everything there is that's been written on it. So yeah, it's one of the areas I would really like to go to in the world. One of the few I haven't been to. So
Yeah, so I guess it's really kind of changed things when that place kind of was discovered, right? As far as like,
absolutely, yes, yeah, it's a mind-blowing site, and just yeah, rewrote the book.
and there, would you say that's the only site like that, or would you say that there are other sites around the world that are as important, I guess?
Well, not at the same time period. Um, they recently did find what they call a pyramid, dating back even earlier, which may be the same kind of phenomena. But there are other sites like Göbekli Tepe in that same region, the Karahan Tepe, and there's a bunch of others that have the same kind of carved pillars and semi-subterranean circular structures, and yeah, they've got a lot of similarities in that whole area. So it's not just a one-off. It's part of a network, a complex of cultural developments for that area. But in other parts of the world, yeah, there's Chavin de Huantar, which is agricultural rather than hunting and gathering, but it's the same basic, I think it's basically the same kind of phenomena with even more resources because you've got an agricultural basis. And Stonehenge, and Avebury and a lot of the big megalithic monuments, I think are very similar. And yeah, so there's no lack of them. Pueblo Bonito in the southwest is another one. The Olmec phenomena, the major Olmec sites in southeastern Mexico, I think are the same kind of phenomena. There's a series of sites in Neolithic China that are also very similar. So a big monumental construction, very strong ritual orientations, regional centers, lots of prestige goods. They're all pretty similar in those respects.
If we look at something like that, it's obviously an untrained eye. But when you look at something like Göbekli Tepe, what do you see there? Like what does that tell you when you see that sort of? I mean, it's putting back the history of things, I guess.
Yeah, it's surprising to see it that early, um, to some extent. Another similar kind of development, although it doesn't involve architecture, but it's with hunting and gathering societies. I think the painted caves in France and Spain are a very similar kind of phenomena too. So, when I look at Göbekli Tepe, um, first thing is there's no good water source. It's out up on the top of a mountain. It's not really your normal residential site. There may be some residential structures there, but probably nothing, on the scale of a regular village or anything like that.
Yeah.
The amount of manpower that was involved in building it and quarrying and transporting the stones, carving the stones, shaping them. Uh, you're looking at massive, massive, massive efforts and expenditure of manpower. And that all is predicated on surpluses, being able to pay people. I mean, that's how you get these things done. It's not done uh, on the basis of belief and just goodwill. No, these things have to be paid for with feasting, basically. The slaughter of animals, usually cattle, or the hunting of animals, providing of meat especially, and it seems at Göbekli probably alcohol as well, beer. Um, so that's one thing. The other thing is the really strong ritual orientation of these structures. They're not domestic structures, despite what some people think. Um, they are semi-subterranean, so that they are not meant to be out in the open where everybody can watch. No, they're meant for a restricted number of people, and they're hidden away, out of sight, so that they are secret, if you like. Um, and the number of depiction of animals, there are a lot of what I would call power animals, snakes and aurochs, the wild cattle and boars and animals like that. These are not your usual hunting animals. They're pretty dangerous kinds of animals with high symbolical loadings, and birds as well, birds of prey especially. So, the iconography, the kinds of images that are depicted on these pillars, they're all power images, which is what I think secret societies are fundamentally about. And finally, there's a number of phallic representations, which tends to be something that crops up with male-dominated secret societies. Um, there's also, feasting foods, as I said, alcohol, which is certainly one of them, and meat. And then there was one more thing I was thinking of here. Um, it's gone. At any rate, so that's all of those things I think are very typical of secret society kinds of organizations. Oh, the other thing was there's some indication of scattered human bone mixed in with the bones of animals that were eaten during feasts. And that's another thing that I found tends to be fairly common with ethnographic secret societies. That is, there's an emphasis on cannibalism as a show of power and as a transgression of normal morality.
I guess the sacrificing plays into that, I guess, too, to some degree, right?
Oh yeah.
There's
Well, if you got cannibalism, you got sacrifice. Yeah.
into the extents with which that they would do the sacrificing. I mean, they make a big show out of it, right? It's a big production, so
Yeah. Yeah. There's another site, Jurf el Ahmar down in Syria, where they've got the same kind of semi-subterranean circular structure, the same kind of benches along the walls. They don't have the central pillars, but it's divided up nevertheless, about the same size. And remarkably, in one of these structures, there was a headless body that was uh, prone, basically face down, except the head was missing. And just one of the most dramatic. It was a young woman, right in the middle of the floor, and the fingers are still dug into the ground, or the bones of the fingers. It's just one of the most dramatic, kinds of events that I can imagine.
where was
And
this again?
Jurf el Ahmar, Jurf the red, Ahmar means red. It's along the Euphrates. It was excavated when they were putting in one of the dams. Um, yeah, it was a woman named Stordeur that was doing the excavations there. And yeah, it's just remarkable.
Do you
There are
see
other
lots of commonalities or how many commonalities in different sites like this around the world have you seen that made you like wonder why does this look like somebody that's way over here on this side of the planet, or how have these things sort of shown up to be very similar when people are so far away and supposedly maybe never had contact with one another?
Well, that's true. That's true. It's a good point. No, instead of having a single origin and these ideas spreading around the world, I think what's common is the strategy that people come up with to try to impress people and to consolidate power using secret societies strategies. And what they do is they try to impress people with, first of all, um, with their profane power, that is their control over human life, and they try to induce really strong emotions in people by making them go through very difficult trials and by giving them shocking kinds of emotional events to deal with. Oh, and another thing that's really interesting, and this is very common, another common feature is the use of sensory deprivation to induce altered states, because when people are in altered states, they tend to be much more susceptible to suggestion and to accepting things and to manipulation. Um, and the altered states also reinforce the claim that these secret societies know how to contact the supernatural and to manipulate it. And so there's a lot of effort spent in creating altered states of consciousness in initiates in particular. And one of the ways you do that is through sensory deprivation. That is by going into very dark areas with very little or no lighting, and no sound. And so what we find is a lot of these initiation areas for secret societies are held in naturally dark areas like caves, or in constructed dark areas like semi-subterranean or completely subterranean buildings that are dug into the ground, and that you can shut all light and sound out of. So it serves two functions. One is it keeps everything secret because nobody can see in, but it also creates these sensory deprivation kinds of environments as well. Um,
And
so
just to be clear, you don't think they actually have any sort of special ability to contact the other worlds, and they don't have any actual supernatural powers. I have to ask that question. I'm sorry.
well, that's the $1 million question.
Yeah, you're the expert.
Well, no, I'm not an expert in in trying to determine what reality is of any supernatural claims.
I thought we were going to get all that
I
figured out today.
well, I can give you a couple leads maybe, but it's that's the $1 million question. Yeah, is there any existence after death, or is there any spiritual world at all?
Surely we could figure
Um,
that one out today. Easy.
um, I would say that in terms, there are two aspects to this question. One uh, is there some sort of basic connection that can be made to other realities, other dimensions of reality that we're not normally aware of? Uh, and that's on a very general plane, like if there's some sort of spiritual existence or some sort of supernatural effects. Um, so that's one thing. The other is the specific claims, that is the content of these things. Does my does my grandfather really still exist at some, did my deceased grandfather really exist in some sort of a, or do the gods really exist? Or do angels really exist? Or do leprechauns really exist? Or, you go through the
Right.
whole series of things. And, you know, I, I just have to conclude that there's so much variation in the world, and there has been through time, that these the specific content is probably not very realistic. That these may these concepts and images of other beings may represent, maybe symbolical of some other kind of energy that's out there that does exist, but that we're just giving it a facade, a face to, so that we can relate to it. But that when we start getting into specific, prognostications or specific commandments or specific dictates that are being given down by these entities, uh, that's probably not uh, what's really happening. Those are probably just part of our need to conceptualize things, and a lot of times these, like the commandments, the Ten Commandments, they're probably being promulgated for political or social reasons. People that claim that they have gotten these things from supernatural beings, but they're using that claim, those connections, for their own purposes, and just cloaking them in kinds of concepts that would be acceptable or interesting to the people in their community. So the specific content, I don't think you can make a really good argument for that. But on the general level, um, yeah, there do seem to be some really interesting things going on. And I was actually, I meant to go through book before this show, and I forgot to do it, but it's called Quantum Questions. And it's basically a series of readings by all the most famous new physicists in the world, the people that have developed quantum theory, de Broglie and people like that, and Einstein as well, and Niels Bohr. You go through the list of all of the great scientists, and these are readings by of articles by these individuals that say that, having looked at the microscopic composition of the universe, they still don't know what reality is, and they have very, very mystical kinds of awe about what reality is. And their writings reflect this. And so, it's especially when you get into quantum physics, it's so bizarre kind of world that you got to wonder what's going on. And so if the most famous thinkers of physics have a mystical view of what reality is, I think that's a pretty good indication that there's something going on that we don't have a very good handle on at this point, beyond just the material world that we see in front of us.
Did you ever, or have you ever seen any evidence in everything that you've seen in your career that would lead you to believe that humans have lost any abilities, or that there was some real validity to the whole mysticism and we've lost some sort of abilities or powers over time?
No,
They
I don't
wonder
know
about
that.
how things were built, and I just, you wonder,
Right.
was there some sort of knowledge that some sort of, were people,
No,
people 1,000 years, 10,000 years, were we always the same that we are now, kind of a thing?
well, that's my take on things. Yeah, I don't think people have changed that much. In terms of, especially in terms of building things, basically it just takes a lot of manpower and a lot of time and suitable technology and the ability to pay people to do these things. If you look at Stonehenge, for instance, there are a lot of stories about how the stones might have been used, but one of the interesting things that I found out from my work in Indonesia was that people were still putting up those huge megaliths up until very recent, and they still are in some places. One of my students was working in Sumba, and they were still putting up these large megaliths and still transporting them by human labor. Um, so it's not like you need um, any supernatural powers or anything like that to get these things done. And we've got records because these were major undertakings. These were phenomenally major works that required huge amounts of finances and surplus food, a huge amount of labor. And they were so big that just the transportation of these things was recorded in stone by the Egyptians and Sumerians. And you can see them dragging these huge monuments on rollers, big log rollers, and pouring oil down in front of these things to help lubricate the transport, and hundreds of people pulling on ropes to move these things. So there's no mystery about how these monuments were built. You just need a lot of people, and as I say, we're still doing it today.
I wasn't aware that they were still doing that today. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
there's not very many places that they're still doing it, but and they're starting to use trucks these days to to do it. But there's still some people that like the old traditional ways. So
That is very interesting. I was not aware of that.
yeah,
Not that I
yeah,
wanted
there's a
to
lot of
imply telepathic powers or telekinesis there. I was just curious what you thought about that.
Yeah, well, I know there are a lot of people that think that there must have been some supernatural, element involved, but no,
Definitely more
there's
fun if
not.
you do that.
Yeah, if you Google Sumba and stone moving, you can see a lot of pictures of those.
I will be doing that later.
I'm just going to ask a question. Just kind of going back to the beginning of your career. What was it that got you interested in the whole societies and the feasting? Like, was there a certain site that you visited that got you going on that, or have you always been interested in that?
No, it's a little bit of an involved story. I'll try to keep it as short as I can. But I was excavating a site in British Columbia where we had some indication of inequalities and hierarchy, a little, not much, but a little bit, and also a lot of prestige goods and things like that. Uh, I was pretty convinced that there were people that were in positions of power. Um, and I was trying to figure out, well, how this all worked. And according to the um, standard view at the time, this is going back 30 or 1986 at any rate, um, the standard view at the time was that people were put in power initially, when uh, starting from egalitarian societies in order to serve the community. There was a community need for defense or for processing food or for getting food, capturing food, whatever it happened to be. Or for information transfer. There was a whole bunch of suggestions. And, this is all sort of abstract as far as I was concerned. I wanted to see if we could document exactly how that works in real villages at that similar level. And I'd worked in the Mayan area before, so I thought, well, we'll go down. Uh, I took a student down there and we went to some of these Mayan villages that had been very isolated up until about 20 years before we were in those villages when they put the Pan American Highway through. And so we started asking people, in the villages, the older people. Okay, well, was there ever any famines or any food shortages, any kinds of events that required some help? Um, and some assistance in the past. And they said, sure, we had, famines and all sorts of other things. And I said, okay, well, what did the people that were in charge in the village, the presidente municipal and people like that, what did they do when there were these famines? Did they organize um, sort of caravans to go out and get food, or did they arrange for loans, or what did they do? Did they help the community? And one community after the other, after the other, after the other, they all said no, they didn't do anything to help. Instead, what they did was they started selling off their stores at exorbitant prices to people that were starving. And they bought up their land at dirt prices because in exchange for corn or maize and things like that. And at first I thought that was probably just historical accident or aberrant for whatever reason. But no, as I said, one village after the next, they were all basically saying the same thing. And so I thought, well, this is a real game changer. And I started thinking that started being interested in how these individuals managed to get that kind of power, and how if they were exploiting people, how are they doing it? And so I started looking at all the different strategies, and feasting was one of them. So any rate, uh, there's another whole dimension to that story, but that's basically it. So I got very interested in feasting as a way of manipulating people in traditional societies. It's still a way of making friends and creating networks, support networks and things like that, or getting things done. Like if you want to get help for moving, you have a big beer and pizza
Hmm.
event. So you feed them, they'll come.
It's also a good way to show that your society's better than everybody if you have all that to just to throw around, kind of. So
Well, it's a way of inviting people that you want to um, create a strong relationship with. Yeah, and trying to impress them and try to please them and give them foods that they really like, and that creates a sort of sense of debt. When the uh, when when the Hare Krishnas wanted to recruit people, they would give away free food. And what this does is sort of emotionally, that we're hardwired to, when we get something that we like, or just get something for nothing, we feel a sense of obligation or a sense of reciprocity that we should, do something in return. So.
Is that kind of the origins of like shamanism? Does that sort of where that starts? Someone sort of has this ability and power and they can provide this. I mean, is that part of the sort of like aristocracy that they create around a secret society?
Yeah, there's maybe a little bit of a relationship there. I mean, shamans usually get paid for their work. They get food in exchange for their services. Um, and there is, I don't know, I think some senses shamans have more power, more influence at any rate in community affairs than most other people. But they're also generally repositories of knowledge for the community. They know the mythology. They know how to contact ancestors or other spirits. They know how to find game. So they're a major resource for a lot of communities,
When they use
and
psychedelics, hallucinogens, I mean, are these things like just trial and error over the eons? People come up with these things, find these things, or I guess one wonders if there was more to how they came up with their bag of tricks, kind of so to speak, like where did they come up with all this stuff that's.
Well, yeah, good question. In terms of the psychedelics, people are constantly, I mean, it's not just the shamans, but everybody is constantly in traditional societies trying out different herbs and different preparations and different techniques for finding something to eat, basically. And if you try everything, you're eventually going to come across some psychedelics. Um, some of the preparations are so involved, it's kind of got to
Ayahuasca.
scratch. Yeah, you got to scratch your head and wonder how they figured that one out. But
what are some of those
um,
preparations? Do you have any examples that
oh well,
people are interested to know?
just getting the toxins out of acorns and out of manioc and things like that, or blowing stuff up your nose, like the ayahuasca. Why would you do that? I have no idea.
Mhm.
Um, why it would occur to anybody
Who
to
was the
blow?
first guy, right?
Yeah, why would they be roasting this stuff and blowing it up their nose? Yeah. Um,
I guess that's
so
why people would wonder, did they have some sort of special ability too, if they could create these potions, these brews and stuff, and then give them to
well,
people. And
again, in terms of abilities to know what's on the other, beyond the veil in the other dimensions of the universe. Um, I don't know if you ever saw one of these ceremonies where the shamans and the Amazons sort of blow the ayahuasca up their nose and then start seeing the Hecata spirits. It's Yeah, it's pretty transparent that all this stuff is just being made up on them at the time. I mean, and that well, they are hallucinating, but if you get a chance, Napoleon Chagnon made a film called The Magical Death, and yeah, it's just pretty transparent as to, that all this stuff is just basically being hallucinated, and it probably doesn't have much connection with anything real other than on a very general level, that there might be, some sort of spiritual energies, let's call them, out there, but they're not they're not going around with all these fancy feathers, and they're not killing individuals from the enemy tribe and things like that. So,
You've seen the show
any,
before.
yeah, yeah, I used to use it in a class, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Wow.
When you're in like in a cave or whatever, looking at the old art like cave paintings, can you tell the difference pretty quick between like what is this an everyday drawing or the stuff that people are hallucinating and they're just drawing all kinds of crazy stuff? Is it pretty glaringly obvious what's what?
No, no. When we go back, if we're talking about the Upper Paleolithic caves, from 10 to 30 plus thousand years ago, there's really no everyday kind of scene or image in those caves. Uh, there are animals, but they're not, I wouldn't call them everyday, and I don't think they were hallucinated either. There's basically two kinds of images that you get in the Upper Paleolithic caves. Later on in the Neolithic and the Bronze Age, yeah, you get some art, painted art or engraved art that looks battle scenes and marriages and
Mhm.
hunting scenes and all sorts of stuff like that. Um, but in the Upper Paleolithic, you don't get those things. What you get are either one, very crude kinds of images that are like the graffiti you might see in a bathroom stall.
Mhm.
Just people that don't have a lot of artistic talent, just scribbling around sometimes, or just making crude without any artistic training. I shouldn't say
Right.
without any talent, but they didn't have any training. So you get those kinds of things. And, I've compared those to the same kind of situations you get in really slow elevators, because you get graffiti in elevators too. And
Right.
basically, you're just stuck in that place and waiting for a long time, and you're bored. And so you start scribbling on the walls. So that's basically what bathroom graffiti is about too. Um, and so there's that kind of stuff. And maybe that's everyday kind of, that would enter into everyday kinds of interests or themes. Um, and then you get the really professional, high quality art that was obviously made by people that were trained, and I'm pretty sure paid for creating these images in deep in the caves. Because we get evidence of scaffolding that was put up in order to paint these images high up. We get very complex paint recipes that took time to develop and get the materials for. Uh, they required a long period inside the caves rather than just a short visiting period. People had to spend hours, basically, in some cases, maybe days, making these images. So you need to bring in lighting sources for long time periods. They're major undertakings.
Mhm. Is that would the
Um,
example of that be the Lascaux, France cave? Is that
Yes,
okay?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Lascaux is sort of like it's been called the Sistine Chapel of of
Yeah.
the Paleolithic, basically, and I think that's basically what it was, because the Sistine Chapel was really only for use by the Pope and his entourage, and I think in some of the more difficult areas to access in Lascaux. It was probably only for the highest ranking individuals
Mhm.
as well, but these are really well decorated uh, parts of the cave.
You've actually been there, right? I've seen videos on YouTube and stuff. I'm sure actually going there is a whole
Oh
different
yeah,
level.
yeah, no, it's a lifetime experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Yeah, I was been in Lascaux and Font de Gaume and Neo and a bunch of the other caves. And they're fabulous. There's some that are still open to the public, and I can't recommend them highly enough to for people to go visit.
So when you find all this stuff, like you mentioned paint recipes and stuff, do you guys just get the paint and figure out what's made of, or is there like records that they kept or something like that they you figure out all this stuff?
Yeah, no, there's no records. This is way before writing,
Right.
although there is some symbolic uh, inscriptions, but who knows what they refer to. Um, but no, it's just taking small chips of paint that have maybe flecked off of the walls or on a block of stone that's fallen onto the ground from above. And so they basically take small bits of the paint and analyze it.
In the is the sorcerer that's one of the cave paintings in France? I'm looking through some of the images in your book, and that looked like another image from another cave in another part of the world, the Sioux.
Yeah, no, that's a great image. Yeah, that's the sorcerer. That's what he's called. Uh, is from the cave of Les Trois Frères down in near the Pyrenees Mountains
I didn't want
in
to butcher that.
France.
That's why I didn't say that part.
That's okay. Um, and yeah, it's got the head of a deer or something like a deer. It's got antlers and it's got this long tail,
Yep.
and he's turned to look right at, sort of in a walking pose and turned to look right at the viewer. And you get almost the exact same depiction from a secret society image in North America from the Sioux. Yeah. This antlered figure with the same tail, the same gaze, the same gait. And the one, the Sioux example is, and this is a historic image, but he's holding a drum. The one in France wasn't holding a drum, but otherwise, just remarkably similar. And so I'm not trying to say that there was any direct connection or anything like that, but to see these two totally independent sources coming up with something that's so similar just indicates to you that the same processes, the same mental processes, the same kinds of effects that people are trying to achieve with these concepts and the images is very fundamental to our way of thinking. And so, at any rate, it was just a remarkable coincidence. Yeah.
So, time frame wise, were these two images roughly created at the same time, or were they?
No, 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 no. The one in France is like 10 or 12,000 years old, and the Sioux example is modern. I mean, it's
When you say modern,
probably, well, 1890 or the early 1900s. Yeah, in there.
that's still really weird, isn't it?
It is, it is, it is. But you get a lot of really you get enough people and they're trying to do the same kind of thing and come up with the same
Connections.
kinds of strategies and same kinds of ways of impressing people and the same basic orientation towards an um, animal spirituality, if you want to call it that. And you got to come up with some sort of similar results in unexpected ways from time to time. So I there was a great example of that I used in class from a Mayan excavation down in Mexico. It was a potsherd, and on the potsherd there was these symbols that looked like a C and an O and an E, and it's there's no there's no letters or anything like that in that area. But of interest, one of the main archaeologists in Mexico was named Michael Coe. And there's his name on this pot that was 3,000 years old. So,
I guess our minds we try to make these connections, I guess. You think it's just
Oh
we
yeah. No, just to say that, you could come up with weird coincidences sometimes.
in South America, I guess the
It's like
newest.
it's like the story of the infinite number of monkeys and the infinite number of typewriters, and they produce Shakespeare eventually. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. You make a valid point.
Yeah,
Um, in South America, I guess the newest thing, they're kind of using lidar now to kind of get through
yeah.
uh, the tree cover and stuff, and they're starting to find a lot more structures and things like that. What are your thoughts on that as to what they're going to come across, what they're going to discover, what they're going to find? Any
Well,
thoughts from you?
they're already coming up with fabulous insights into the complexity of some of the uh, they were probably chiefdoms in the Amazon way before the Spanish arrived, and that probably disappeared before the Spanish arrived in many places because of a lot of events, whether it's climate change or whether it's overshoot and erosion, over irrigation, there are a lot of reasons why these uh, early societies collapsed in a lot of cases, complex societies like chiefdoms or even states. When the ethnographers, when early explorers arrived in the Amazon, they found very tribal kinds of fairly simple societies. Um, and the Amazon was covered with jungle. And so it was fairly unthinkable that there would have been complex societies there in the past. But, the LiDAR is really showing, no, they were building mounds, they had irrigation, they had all sorts of things that very large settlements. They had really thriving kinds of, uh, we could probably call them civilizations. Um, but certainly chiefdom levels kinds of things, building mounds, elaborate ritual and religious lives and things like that. And we get the same thing in the Maya, especially the Petén area of Guatemala and southern Yucatan, where there's basically was very few people living at the time the Europeans arrived, and it was all covered with jungle, uh, rainforest jungle, tropical jungle. And it was a big surprise to find there were pyramids there initially. And then later on to find out that no, these large areas were being cleared and irrigated, uh, big water management systems undertaken, large cities. We're still discovering a lot more. So yeah, LiDAR has really opened our eyes to see what things were really like in the past rather than what we assumed things were like because of the low populations and dense jungle cover when the Europeans arrived.
Do any of your theories differ from what you would maybe call mainstream archaeology as to what time frames and things like that going into the past, or technologies as far as like the way they built things, the way you see pyramids all over the world? Do you have any differing theories? As I mentioned in the email, educated speculation. You're free
Yeah.
here to say and think whatever you like.
Okay, well, thanks. I don't have too many widely divergent ideas, although I am in arguments with a bunch of people in France about the painted caves. The big bone of contention right now that I'm involved in, where my ideas are divergent from, I guess, mainstream French archaeological thought, is whether the societies during the ice ages, say 10 to the upper Paleolithic ice ages, 10 to 35,000 years ago in southwestern Europe, whether they were egalitarian societies where uh, nobody had any undue power or wealth or influence over other people, or whether they were in fact inegalitarian societies where there were people with a lot of power and wealth and influence. And so, the model that I use, or I should say the model that the egalitarian people use, are ethnographic groups like the San in the Kalahari Desert of Africa, or perhaps in the boreal forests of North America, or the Australian Aborigines, which are all fairly egalitarian kinds of communities traditionally. Whereas the ethnographic model that I think is most appropriate are the ethnographic hunter gathering groups in California and the Northwest and in Alaska, coastal Alaska. Especially I think it's the most appropriate ones are the ones in the interior of the Northwest, which is the area I've been working on, and which did have, slaves and potlatches, and because and like the ones in the coast as well, and also a lot of wealth in terms of beads, but coppers and jade and other things as well. So yeah, there were especially on the coast. In the Northwest, there were a lot of slaves traditionally, and this goes back, probably several thousand years. We can use linguistics to look at words that were common a few thousand years ago, and slave is one of them. Also chief. So, and I think we can see a lot of evidence of wealth in the Upper Paleolithic burials in particular, but also the production of art, just an enormous production of art, comparable, I think, to what the art that was being produced on the Northwest coast and the interior in California. And so I think there's really strong reason for thinking that these groups in the Upper Paleolithic were non-egalitarian groups that had differences in wealth and power, and probably wives or marriage partners, wives probably, because rich people could afford to obtain more wives because there was a cost involved. But they also used secret societies to consolidate the wealth and power, and they had the finances, if you like, the material wherewithal to train artists and to employ artists to make these incredible masterpieces in caves and elsewhere as well, carved pieces that are real masterpieces, or masterpieces in stone that very few people could make even today. Yeah, so I mean that's my argument, but and it's considered heretical by a number of people in France, and I make the same argument for the Natufians in the Near East, who were around just before agriculture, 12 to 14,000 years ago, and come up with the same argument there. The people in the Near East, the archaeologists in the Near East, don't think that they were non-egalitarian. They think everything was egalitarian. I said, no, no, no. These guys had wealth. They're burying people with thousands of shell beads, and each one of those beads takes considerable time to make, or is difficult to obtain.
I wonder why they wouldn't consider that, or wouldn't think that, if you see it elsewhere. You know what I mean? It seems like that would be a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, it seems no-brainer to me too. Yeah, some people are reluctant to give up their pet theories. So,
do you have any other theories regarding other aspects of ancient
well,
cultures?
domestication. That's another one that I've had a hard time convincing other people about, but I'm convinced that it's pretty close to the money. And basically, the argument is that once you get these these more complex, non-egalitarian societies, that, well, how do they get to be a complex and non-egalitarian? Well, one of the ways is that feasting, as I mentioned before, because feasting creates debts. If you get invited to a feast and given fine food, then you're obligated to return that same favor by holding a feast of your own and inviting the previous hosts to your, and especially if you get given gifts like jade or copper or specially carved bowls or things like that. You need to return those. If you don't return the feast and if you don't return the gifts, especially with interest or with a little bit of top up, you create a social enemy, and then it becomes very difficult. So once you buy into these feasting systems, you're pretty much stuck there, and you can get more and more into debt and never get out of it, sort of like the same credit card systems today. But at any rate, so my argument is that these feasting systems, when they become competitive, it's a positive feedback kind of system where you give a gift once, and when you get the return, there's more involved because the person that's returning to it wants to impress you with how good he is, how rich he is. And so then you have to return something more to him. And there's a built-in mechanism to make this ever more productive. And you don't have any kind of mechanism in the past to try to force people to produce more and more. And especially if you're competing over marriage partners or alliance partners or partners that have important food resources that you want to get access to. Other people are trying to get those same people in marriage. Other people are trying to get those same resources or the same allies. So when you've got competition going on, there's a built-in drive to produce more because you've got to outproduce the competition. If you want to get the marriage partner, if you want to get the war ally, if you want to get the new resources. And so feasting is the means of generating more of these gifts. It's always done in this feasting kind of context, marriage feasts or alliance feasts or whatever it happens to be. And so there's pressure to produce more and more and more. And the most important items in these traditional feasts are, first of all, meat, and especially fatty meat, very rich meat like we get in the supermarkets today. That used to be a rare commodity. And alcohol, meat, alcohol, and starches, bread, are the three triumvirate, the three pillars that hold up feasts in traditional societies. And those are the things that we get domesticated first: grains, animals, and alcohol comes in shortly afterwards. And just to put a fine point on the topic, in the ethno-archaeological investigations I've done and other people have done, made the same observation. In traditional societies, domesticated animals are only used in feasts. They're not used for daily food. They are major investments. They are the most valuable things in traditional communities, whether it's pigs, goats, cattle, even rabbits. They're only killed for special occasions. And it's true today in traditional societies throughout the world. It's one of the most ironclad patterns that I know of. And I think that indicates that is exactly the context that animals were domesticated in the reason why they were domesticated in the past as well. They are the origins of domestication, is my argument. Trying to argue against other people that say, oh no, it was food shortages that drove people to domesticate foods. I said, no, no, no. You only get feasting and when you get food surpluses. And when you get competitive feasting, there's never enough food. There's never enough material you can give away to outcompete your competitors.
These secret societies, do they quickly seem to like get a little nefarious with their activities? Like how quickly do these things all seem to like, when they want to exercise power over other people and, you know,
Right.
that seems to
Well,
be a big, by the very, just by saying secret society, these group of people have this, do this, know that, and then everybody else is on the outside.
that's right. Well, what they do is they try to get support from the rest of the community for their activities for protecting the community and watching out for its supernatural and for its physical welfare. And basically, they want to get um, in order to join the secret society, you need to pay a high price, but they also get contributions from the rest of the community for their rituals and for their performances and for everything else, for their existence. And in order to do that, you need to convince them that you've got some validity. And they do that. Um, there are two fundamental strategies, two basic strategies that they use. One is the carrot and the other is the stick. So they put on big shows to convince people and to tell them that they're providing all these great benefits for the community, keeping the cannibal spirits out of the community, making sure the sun comes up, making sure the crops are good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the carrot. And for the people, because there are always a few people that are doubters, that are skeptics, that say, I don't believe any of this BS. This is all a bunch of, malarkey. And that there are no spirits, there's always doubters. At least that's what I found. And I think the most detailed accounts of community beliefs indicate that as well. And so what do you do with those people if you're in trying to convince everybody to contribute to you? You've got to have a stick of some sort. And people that contravene or that publicly doubt the veracity or the reality of what these secret societies are proposing, and that try to undermine the basis for their claims, they can't really be tolerated. And so they get attacked. If there's anybody that transgresses into secret society space where they hold their rituals, their buildings, they can be killed. And that's one of the most common kinds of observations people made about secret societies in different parts of the world, is that transgressors are either whipped or killed, or certainly the threat is always there. And their houses could be visited by people in masks, so you don't know who's behind the mask. And the mask is supposed to be a supernatural entity that's really pissed off at you because you said that they didn't exist. And there they are burning your house down. So yeah, they can be pretty nasty, especially they've got people that they hire as spies too in a lot of cases to go around to listen in to conversations in the community and report anybody to the secret society members who is casting aspersions or casting doubt upon the motivations or the reality of what secret society members are proposing. Um, and in addition to that, in order to demonstrate the reality and also the consequences that could come to pass, um, but to demonstrate the reality of some of these spirits, like the cannibal spirit, um, if you if you don't think the cannibal spirits are real, well, we put somebody out in the woods where the cannibal spirits live, some of these initiates. And if we starve them long enough, they'll become possessed by cannibal spirits. And when they come back into the village after their time of seclusion, they are possessed by cannibal spirits, and they create havoc and terror. And it's not only the cannibal spirits. I mean, in other secret societies, they just the presence of these spirits uh, can create havoc and destruction, whether they're cannibal or other kinds. And so that's what unleashed supernatural spirits are like. They create havoc and terror, they destroy things, they break down people's houses, furniture, they bite people. When they're unleashed, it's absolute terror. And that's what a lot of the early descriptions of these traditional secret societies were like. They said when it's time for their ceremonies, it's just a rule by terror. And these are terrorists. And some of the African secret societies are called, schools of terror. And so this is all done to demonstrate what things would be like if the secret society didn't exert some sort of control over these terrorizing spirits. They would just create total chaos. It's like, the Night of the Living Dead movies that you see, or zombie movies. That's
Yeah.
the kind of vision that emerges from some of these accounts. Just a total social, economic, and every other kind of chaos, with people dying and suffering because of it. But thank goodness the secret societies are there to protect you. And so they step in and they, put the cedar ring around the cannibal, the boy that's possessed by cannibal spirit, and all of a sudden he becomes calm and docile and everything is fine again. And so, but if you don't support the secret society, that's what can happen.
And so bringing that into knowing that people were like that then and knowing how people are now, bringing that into the modern day and sort of going back to that thread that I sent you that was on Twitter where people were looking at your
Yeah.
book, The Power of Ritual and Prehistory.
Yeah.
Um, how pervasive do you see this in modern society? Because that particular thread, the person was talking about parapolitics, which has to do with obviously your governments, your intelligence agencies, the way they may use church, religion, all of these things tied together to do this, what sounds like exactly what you're saying to the peasantry.
Well, I think these um, strategies that were developed, thousands of years ago by these ambitious people that want power and want to get wealth. I think they set the foundation for our type of society. Uh, and they established the initial strategies. I mean, we still use feast to get support, all these political dinners, corporate dinners for recruiting clients and people. And, it's still using the same strategies. In politics, the same thing. The rhetoric hasn't changed either. I mean, the rhetoric of everybody in the secret society is that we are protecting you. There are all these horrible things in the world, but we're protecting you from, and you know, and we can do it better. We've got still a competitive, organizations. There wasn't just one secret society. There was usually several within these communities, just like political parties today. And they were competing with each other for membership and for influence. And things like that. They were basically running the show. Um, and I think basically all of these strategies were set thousands of years ago by ambitious people who are using surpluses. And you have to realize that, the our society has enormous surpluses. There are very few people left that are actually producing most of our food. With machines, we can produce a lot more. But you know, we've got all this surplus energy we're getting from other sources. The main source of surplus energy used to be food. Now we've got a dozen other really important other kinds of sources, like fossil fuels in particular, um, to produce energy that it's all surplus. We don't need any of this stuff. Uh, our society is a consumer society, but this all started back when secret societies were started and feasters started giving gifts in order to get marriage partners and alliances and um, everything else. So to produce these gifts, it's basically surplus production. It's not anything you need to survive, um, or at least not strictly in terms of physical needs. Um, Today we can't really survive without our social network. And so we're stuck with production of some sort of surplus to survive. But at any rate, so things have evolved in that sense. But the strategies that are used are still fundamentally the same that were established by these people when they first started producing surpluses 10,
Things like
30,000 years
propaganda.
ago. Yeah, well, the rhetoric, as I say,
Yeah,
has not really changed much. That people always do things for the good of the community.
they create the problem and then they fix it for you.
That's right. That's right.
And it may seem far fetched, but I'm just going to ask, do you think any of these ancient societies, do people still have any beliefs? I mean, there's subcultures and things like that, but like in the upper crust, we'll say the higher elite, do they have any sort of, I don't know, strange belief systems that have ever, surfaced, rituals even that they may do?
You mean contemporary society?
Yeah, you have like your fraternities like Skull and Bones and things like that, where you hear a lot of things, but we don't know anything for certain. So you just wonder to what level these people are in and to what levels they'll do things. You know what I mean? To
Yeah, it's not something I've looked into in a lot of detail, but if you're in Washington, D.C., you should go visit the Scottish Rite Temple of the Masonic Order and look at all the people that were members of that. The Masonic Order was basically a modern kind of secret society that claimed to have esoteric knowledge and things like that. But look at that. It's an incredible building. And look at the roster of vice presidents and CEOs and politicians and astronauts and major figures in national society. Look at the roster of members that belong to that. They've got their pictures up on the walls.
give you creep vibes.
No, it doesn't give me creeps these days, but they're not sacrificing anybody anymore.
That we know of.
Yeah, that we know of. May have may have supporters that they throw under the wheel sometimes of the bus.
Yeah, you wonder about that. That kind of the again going back to that thread and his other threads like it that I've seen on Twitter in regards to your book, essentially trying to understand modern power structure because it's been in place before. There've been other ancient cultures that have used the same
Yeah,
tricks, bag of tricks, right?
yeah, yeah. That's what I would say. Yes.
Are there any other, like, other than the Masons, Masonic? Are there any other that you have taken note of that are sort of modern, where all of these CEOs are connected to it and things like that, where and
Well,
presidents and
there's occasional reports of some similar kinds of organizations, but I don't know how serious they are about having claims to esoteric knowledge. Um, I don't know. It seems to me it might be more of just a social kind of thing. But there was the Hellfire Club in London in the
Ben Franklin
18th or
was in that
19th.
one, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was in a cave, wasn't it? They had a cave.
Yeah, that's right. So that's one sort of modern example. But if there's anything today, that was the 19th, 18th century. If there's anything today, there might be. I haven't been privy to any of the esoteric that's going on that might be real claims to esoteric knowledge. But
Well, just forewarned, you may be asked about this in the future now that your book is making its way around
okay,
Twitter. The whole parapolitics angle, trying to figure out what's going on.
right, right.
Uh, obviously, like, wars and things like that, they very rarely, if ever, are what they present them to be to us as to why we're getting into a conflict somewhere. So you
Yeah,
can't believe a word that they're saying, right?
there's no lack of them today, that's for sure.
Do they see that as some sort of a ritual? I mean, the elite, they never send their children off, right? So to the battle.
That's right. Well, New Guinea used to have what were called the ritual wars, and in some respects, very much like some of the contemporary wars. And they'd go on for months, and people would have to prepare. There's all prearranged, um, and people would prepare huge amounts of wealth and food for years before they started these wars, and they'd go on for months and sometimes years. Um, and it was all about, you know, um, it's hard to tell what they were about, but it was about exchanging wealth mainly, for war payments for people that were injured or people that got killed. It was mainly for show. People got together to show off all their wealth and their um, yeah. Polly Wiesner has some interesting uh, accounts of these. So it was more like a potlatch, it was more like a huge event to exchange wealth and to make social arrangements. And yeah, just I don't know. It's something I need to look into more.
Yeah, it's very odd, and like I said, you can't really take what they're saying at face value. So, uh,
Yeah,
for the justification for any of these things, at least I don't think that way. Anyway, it's
yeah. Well, the ritual wars in New Guinea were definitely not for conquering anybody or for winning a war. It was just, it was all the payments that were involved in getting things ready and compensating people and for yeah, just yeah, I don't know.
If you don't mind, can I just change gears here for a second? Just take us
Sure.
down a different road, perhaps. You're an archaeologist, and I just want to get your thoughts. Graham Hancock's been making the rounds lately with his theories and his what some people call pseudo archaeology. What are your opinions about that area and all that stuff?
I'm not sure. I haven't followed the some of the more outlandish claims very carefully. Can you give me examples?
There's a lot of like past civilizations that were highly advanced that
I'll throw it out. Atlantis. I'm
there
going
you
to
go.
throw it out there real quick. Atlantis.
Perfect example.
Sorry, we have to do it.
Okay, well, no, that's fine. Yeah, so there's no geological or physical evidence for anything in the Atlantic Ocean that would correspond to Atlantis, but Thera in the Aegean does fit pretty nicely. And as there's a great film out that's just called Atlantis. And so Akrotiri is, the islands, and the description from Plato, which is really the only source. Yeah, it's not of a Stone Age society 10,000 years ago. It's of a Bronze Age society. And so they point out in the film that, if you screwed up on the decimal point, instead of, 10,000 years ago, if it was 1,000 years ago from when Plato was writing, yeah, everything fits in terms of the description of the society, in terms of the events on Thera, the collapse of the civilization, the volcanic eruption, the nature of the civilization. There's so many details that fit into Plato's description that and the huge tidal waves that created havoc all over the Mediterranean, the mud, the ash that clogged the ocean navigational routes for years after the eruption. Is just such a catastrophic event. It's hard to believe that it could have been forgotten about by anybody, and it must have appeared in some sort of myth. And the story of Atlantis is the best fit.
I'm so excited to hear you say that.
Yeah, no, it's a great film. It's a great film.
You normally throw out Atlantis and people are like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
But that was a very promising answer, a very promising response. So I appreciate it.
Sure.
Because I'm an Atlantis nut.
Hey, well, you got a lot to deal with. So if you're going to go and look at Thera and Akrotiri, yeah.
I will be looking into that. So I guess
I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up a little bit. We've taken a lot of your time as it is. Can I ask two very basic, some may say dumb questions?
Sure.
To an archaeologist. It's not every day you get to talk to an archaeologist. This one is from my brother. He specifically requested me to ask this. How do you know when you're digging, right? When you're on a site, how do you know when to stop using the shovel and switch to the brush so you don't break stuff?
Well, if you're not finding anything, you use the shovel.
It's that simple.
Yeah, and it depends on what kind of archaeology you're doing too. If you're dealing with building collapse or something like that in an urban center, you probably got a lot of collapse to go through, and before you hit the living floor. So you could go through that with a shovel, and then once you get the first indication that you've hit, darker sediments or a living floor, it's somewhat different, then yeah, you stop and you use a trowel, or it's just basically common sense. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't want to say that, so I'm glad you said that. So,
Okay.
Has any archaeologist ever in the history of archaeology triggered a booby trap, or is that pure movie nonsense?
I don't know of one,
Okay.
but I don't deal with the advanced civilizations that could have created booby traps very well.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't know of any situations. There have been archaeologists who have been killed in the field by pot hunters, basically, because pot hunters are, getting illegal treasures and selling them on the art markets and things like that, and they don't want anybody turning them into the authorities. So they, yeah, sometimes get killed that way.
Well, thank you for humoring me with those two questions. Those are special requests. So
No problem.
yeah, so I guess we can go ahead and call it an episode here, and greatly appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
That was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for your interest in all these things.
Absolutely. I think I
Yeah.
have many more questions still. So
Well, I've still got a lot of questions too, but ones I need to find the answers to somehow eventually. Somebody needs to find answers to.
Okay, and we're back. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Dr. Brian Hayden.
Yeah, I know I sure did, especially my hard-hitting journalistic brass tack questions.
I hope we get to talk to him again sometime and go further in detail in some of these things. This was, again, our first time talking with him, first interview. So, we just sort of bounced around to a lot of different subjects. And honestly, I didn't want to keep him forever. So we were, about an hour and a half? So
Yeah, somewhere
I didn't want to go much beyond that for a first interview.
But I think all in all, we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I feel good about it.
I mean, like we said in the intro, he's a real deal guy.
Yeah.
This isn't just some yahoo.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm proud of us. And I'm proud of you for making this happen.
Yeah, well.
Even though it put me through hell.
It's a team effort. It's always a team effort.
That's true.
All right, so I guess that concludes this episode of the program.
Yeah. I got nothing else.
I don't either. Other than the fact that we're going to try to get more interviews and talk to more professionals, more experts.
We'll see.
We'll see, all right.
Okay. All right. So that's that. We'll, I guess I'll go through the whole stupid little stuff here.
Yeah.
Just, get us on all the places you go to get your stuff. TerryblyVexedPodcast@gmail.com.
If you have questions or concerns.
Yep. Anything at all. Instagram, Terribly Vexed Podcast.
Right. X, Twitter, whatever.
Yep. Terribly Vexed Podcast. TerriblyVexed.com for everything all in one convenient location.
Shoot us a message.
All right. We will see you next time.
See ya. Bye.